Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season. My name is Dan and today we are doing a tier list video for Game Week 19. Now I am recording this just before the Manchester United game, so apologies if some things change. Obviously I'll try and update as we go through, but the content must keep rolling. Game Week 19 is fast approaching. Let's do this tier list. If you do enjoy this one, like, subscribe. Let's have a go. So today, guys, we're going to put a particular emphasis on double game week players. So we're going to do this one in 3 sections, really, and we're going to tie it all together in one tier list. We're going to do some popular players, then we're going to go for some double game week players, and finally some honourable mentions at the end that maybe not so many people are talking about. So let's start off with the non-double game week players, and then we'll try and fit some double game week players around them to see where they kind of line up among them all. So first of all, let's put Perisic in. I do think he is going to be an avoid, straight up avoid. I don't even think I would put him as optional at this point. I think he could potentially score points in Game Week 19, but I know a lot of people are buying Perisic for that double game week in Game Week 20. Now, the interesting thing in that Game Week 20 is that Spurs play against Man City and Arsenal. I don't really fancy them for clean sheets in either of those games, and Spurs have been pretty weak defensively in general, so clean sheets are probably not on the cards. But another thing is Perisic has played so many minutes recently for Spurs and over the World Cup that is he going to be able to play so many games in close proximity to each other? Maybe not. And also, there is a chance that this Spurs versus Man City game doesn't even go ahead. That could be postponed depending on whether these two teams draw their games in the Cup. So there's a chance that the double game week doesn't even happen for Spurs and Man City, and that's something really to take note of. So it seems like a little bit premature to go for Perisic this week. If you really want to go for Spurs players, can you maybe afford to wait one more game week and instead shift your focus to some of the other players for Game Week 19? That's probably what I would do. Next up, Nick Pope. Seems a bit of a strange game week to buy him, so I'm going to put him in the avoid section as well. Newcastle play against Arsenal. That's not a good fixture for either of those teams. If you really do want to get Nick Pope in your team, could you maybe just wait one more game week, because we know Arsenal are a top team, and if Newcastle are going to struggle against anyone, maybe concede against anyone, it would be the likes of Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, these teams that are scoring a lot of goals this season. So I think you can actually hold off on Pope this week. Same kind of goes for Trippier. I feel like I'm going to put him in the optional section because at least he does have that attacking threat. But again, for this game week, if you haven't got Trippier already, maybe it's not the time to actually buy him. I've seen a lot of people actually benching Trippier for Game Week 19, so that is just something that some people are doing as well. Definitely Trippier is someone you want to have in your team, but he's another one of those players that if you really do want him, can you wait one more game week before bringing him in? I think that's what I would do personally if I didn't have Trippier in my team already. But like I say, you know, potential to bench him this week anyway. I think I'll probably play him, to be honest, but he's not someone I would necessarily bring in this week. Probably wait one more week and try and go for someone else who has a bit of higher potential, I guess, for Game Week 19. Next up, Saliba. Again, similar situation to Trippier. I'm going to put him in the avoid section just for the same reasons as usual. Gabriel and Ben White are both cheaper than him and offer more attacking threat. Get the same amount of points for clean sheets, but at the same time, it's not a great fixture. Newcastle have been scoring goals. I think probably both of those teams concede in that game. It's going to be a tight one. It's going to be a difficult one to call. And there are some games in Game Week 19 that are much easier to call, much easier to predict, and much higher chance of attacking returns, really, to be honest. So I'm going to put them both in the kind of avoid optional kind of area, and let's move on to some players that I think we're going to put a slightly higher up the list. So Salah, I think, is optional. He's not a player I'd be rushing to get necessarily, and it really depends on who you have. I know a lot of people have been talking about taking out De Bruyne for Salah. I don't really like that move in particular, just because De Bruyne has got that double game week, you know, he's nailed on, you know, assuming that double game week goes ahead. So there's a lot of good things about De Bruyne that I do like that would really make me doubt going for Salah. And I do think Liverpool's fixtures do get slightly worse from here on. They've got Brentford away next. We've seen Brentford go back to the 5 at the back formation, which often provides them a lot of defensive joy. And then they've got the likes of Brighton away after that, not a great fixture. Chelsea at home, not a great fixture. And Wolves away after that as well, not an ideal fixture at all. So they're not terrible fixtures for Liverpool, but if you're thinking about fixtures really, then now's probably not the time to go for Salah. If you're thinking about form, yeah, maybe, I guess, but I can see Salah move into a more creative role, actually, when Gakpo comes back into the team, when Firmino comes back into the team. We could see Salah out a little bit wider as we saw him earlier on in the season. So I do think he's still optional, but he's not a player I'd be rushing to get. Now, as for Harry Kane, he's a player I rate a lot in FPL and has been consistently outscoring the likes of Salah over the course of the season. You know, no one's really outscoring him other than Haaland, really, with Harry Kane. He really is a bit of a FPL beast this season. He really has been doing quite well. And we've got that potential double game week in Game Week 20 as well. So I think it's a good transfer. But again, another player that I would try and wait for the information. If you do really want Harry Kane and you really want him specifically for that double game week, maybe just wait until after Game Week 19 so we know for sure whether that double game week is going to go ahead, because there's still a good chance, a very, very good chance of that Man City versus Spurs game getting postponed. And we'll find that out, you know, within the next week. So we'll find out very soon, but not before the deadline, unfortunately. Now, Luke Shaw, I think it's got to go down as a great transfer. Yeah, home against Bournemouth. I know a lot of people are kind of maybe, you know, trying to go for some Chelsea defenders instead. But with Luke Shaw, we actually have a player who's got a great fixture, a very good chance of a clean sheet, even in the single game week. Good chance of bonus points. He's been doing well for bonus recently. We think he's going to move back to the left back position for Game Week 19 as well, which will be pretty nice. And something not many people are talking about is that Luke Shaw, there is potential for him to have a double game week in Game Week 20, where the additional fixture will be Leeds United. So that actually could end up. I know we look at Luke Shaw and think Game Week 20 could be a weak game week for him. If he gets the double game week, that's actually going to be good. Game Week 20 and 21, I think, are going to be slightly more difficult for Manchester United, but after that, good fixtures do return again. So a good Game Week 19, I think Luke Shaw could actually outscore a lot of the Chelsea defenders, even in the double game week, and he's a player that you probably want to have long term, particularly if you get the double game week, and particularly if you can cover him with another one of your defenders for Game Week 20 and 21, where Man United do play Arsenal and Man City, so two tough fixtures. But Luke Shaw, still a very, very good pick, in my opinion. A great transfer. And I would say he's almost a must-buy at this point. You know, I've gone for him last game week because I just like the look of him a lot. Now, next up, I'm going to go for Saka. And I feel like he's another player I'm going to put in the optional category. Quite expensive at 8.1 million. His underlying numbers are really, really poor. But he is on penalties. He is playing for a great Arsenal team. And generally, I think we do want to go for some Arsenal players soon, because we're going to get a couple of double game weeks in the very near future for Arsenal. And it might be a wise idea to get ahead of that and try and go for some Arsenal players nice and early for that. Now, the one concern is, do you need to do it this game week? Is this a transfer that can wait one more week? Newcastle are a very, very tough defence that Arsenal are playing in Game Week 19. In fact, Newcastle and Arsenal really are the two top defences on form at the moment, so it's very, very difficult to kind of recommend attackers from either of those fixtures. It really does seem like, although we do like Newcastle players, we want them in our team, we do like Arsenal players, we want them in our team, is this the game week to go for them? In my opinion, when there's so many other opportunities elsewhere, particularly with the immediate double game weeks, then I probably would not be looking too closely at Arsenal and Newcastle players this week. I'd be keeping an eye on them, seeing what they're up to, but I don't think I would be too keen to go straight in on them for 19. Game week 18, fair enough. Game week 20, fair enough. But 19, oh, right players, wrong time, perhaps. And you can say the same about Almiron. The good thing about Almiron, though, is that he's just such a great price. So I feel like we still have to put him in at a good transfer. He's still a great player to get. Again, is now the time to get him? Probably not, but he's just been in such good form. If anyone is going to score against Arsenal, and you feel like there may be, you know, a low-scoring game, maybe a 1-1, something like that, if anyone's going to score, if anyone's going to be involved in goals, it's probably going to be Almiron. And you could say the exact same thing about Ødegaard here, who I really do like as a pick as well. I actually think I would rather go for Ødegaard at this point than Almiron. Ødegaard's numbers have just been absolutely insane. He is just growing and growing and growing in presence as a genuine FPL option. He's getting more involved. He's taking more shots. He's being more direct. He's creating more than his teammates. He's actually, his underlying numbers in terms of his shots, his key passes, his expected goals, etc., are actually better than Martinelli's at this point, and far better than Saka. So I think Ødegaard is actually the new Arsenal attacker to look out for at this stage of FPL. But again, is this the game week for it? You know, if Arsenal were playing anyone else other than Newcastle, other than maybe Man City, then I'd probably put Ødegaard in the great transfer category. But we're talking about how good are the transfers. This is what these tier lists are about. They're about ranking transfers, not ranking players. And I think that's really important to take into consideration. And because of that, you are going to see a lot of players who you probably do like fairly low on this tier list. But we are going to move away from some Arsenal and Newcastle players now with Marcus Rashford, who I know a few of you guys are probably a little bit concerned about. Obviously, he had that benching against Wolves, and that's going to be concern a few people. It was apparently for disciplinary reasons. It seems like it was a last-minute change as well to the lineup. So I'm imagining what actually happened here is maybe Rashford maybe turned up late to the game or something like that. It would have been a mild disciplinary thing because Rashford, obviously, he made the bench, to be fair. So it's not like he's been frozen out of the team completely. So you would expect that this is not something that's been very serious, why he's been benched. But just a kind of a warning, just to kind of, you know, Rashford, you know, get yourself sorted, you know, get yourself in gear. We are winding up for the end of the season. We're in great form. You're in great form. You need to be fully on it. We can't afford to slip here. And the lateness kind of thing is, you know, if it's something like that or something minor like that, then, you know, you just need to send a message to the player. That's kind of the thing that Ten Hag will like to do. He's a bit of a hard man like that. So, therefore, Rashford benched in game week 18, game week 19. I do expect him to be back in the team against Bournemouth, which is a much better fixture for Manchester United, a much better fixture for Rashford. Anyone thinking of selling Rashford, I would really urge you at this stage, right now, as I record this video, I would urge you to not do that unless we get more information and it turns out this is a real serious bust up. But I don't think it, judging by what we know right now, I don't think that's the situation. I still think Rashford is a great pick. And even when he plays the likes of Man City and Arsenal in 20 and 21, what we have in Rashford is a player who is, you know, quality on the counter-attack, playing against two teams that do play those very, very high lines there, that is going to allow Rashford to burst behind with his pace and get one-on-ones with the goalkeepers. And you kind of do fancy him. You kind of do fancy him in those one-on-ones with the goalkeepers. If he gets enough chances like that, he probably will finish them. So, yeah, Rashford, I really do like him for the next several game weeks, really. Despite the fact that he was benched, I think he's going to come back, and I think he's going to come back with a bang because he is in such good form and he needs to play. He needs to play for Manchester United. They can't afford to go without him, really, and I think that's kind of been proven maybe to a degree in the Wolves game as well. So, okay, this next one is going to be Tony. Now, this is a really, really controversial one. I'm not actually going to put him in must play. It's a really controversial one because it's so difficult to justify buying Tony because of this impending ban. By game week 20, we could see him banned for it could be months, it could be years from football. We really don't know the situation. And whilst there are other forwards who are good to go for right now, you know, the likes of like Mitrovic, you know, Kai Havertz with the double game weeks. We've got Nketiah, we've got Martial. We've got so many other forwards that we could potentially go for right now that don't provide the same risk, but could provide the same amount of points. Even Callum Wilson, I think, could provide similar points to Tony, but doesn't have that same risk. So it's really difficult. I guess he's optional. I'm not going to recommend him personally. He's not a player that I'll be looking to pick up because I think you can get a similar quality of player for a similar price. Who isn't gonna get like banned, or definitely isn't gonna get banned. But you know, on the other hand, what if Tony doesn't get banned? What if he gets away with it? What if you know, all of these massive amounts of allegations on these betting, you know, charges are completely false? I don't know for sure about that, so I'm not going to give any definitive answer. He's not a player I would go for, but I understand if you would like to go for him. I guess as long as he's scoring points, then that's all good. He's definitely not a player I would sell, and I've said that before. I've said that last game week. He's not a player I would sell, but he's not a player I would buy either. So, kind of up to you. I think there are better options at striker right now, so that you don't need to worry about having to go for Tony and having to take that risk. So why take it if you don't have to? So that's going to conclude that first part of the video, I suppose. Next up, we're going to go for some double game week players, and we've got a lot of them to put in. And I'm going to try and see how they fit in among these single game week players, because some of them I actually think are worse than some of the single game week players, especially if we're thinking long term. Remember, we are picking these players for game week 19, but we also are probably going to have to keep them for a few game weeks after that. So it's not like they're just for one game week only. You don't have unlimited transfers in game week 20. You may have to keep some of these players. So that is something to consider. So first of all, let's put Andreas in. And I feel like he's a pretty obvious player that you want to have in your team. Is he a great transfer? Difficult to say for sure. I like the fixtures against Leicester and Chelsea for Fulham. Fulham typically do quite well against Chelsea as well, so I do think there could potentially be goals there. So yeah, I'm going to put Andreas in the great transfer category. I feel like if you've got another cheap midfielder and not really much else to do with your team, you're happy with the rest of your team, I feel like Andreas could be a really nice player to bring in and just take him for that double game week, play him. His numbers have been really, really good. You know, he is 4.6 million, but I think we often make the mistake of treating him like a 4.5 what, 4.5, 4.6 million midfielder, when really his numbers that he's putting up, more akin to a 6.5 million midfielder, really. So that in a double game week, and you get him for so cheap, and you can just bench him for future game weeks. I actually quite like that. I know a lot of people are actually considering captaining Andreas as well, particularly if he's one of your only double game week players. I don't hate it, to be honest. Double the games, double the opportunities to score points, double the opportunities to get points just for playing. So, you know, you say your player would get a 2-pointer. Well, Andreas is probably looking at a 4-pointer at absolute minimum. Double the chances to get bonus points, which is a huge thing that is not spoken about enough. I think he'll score well. Even without doing anything or doing very little, he can still score and return, if you like. So, yeah, it seems like a great transfer. Seems like a very solid player to pick for your team. As for Tim Ream, I'm not so confident, unfortunately. So I'm going to put him straight in the avoid section. Despite the fact he does have a double game week, I do think Fulham, being one of the worst defences in the whole Premier League, if not the worst defence in the whole Premier League, they are going to concede goals even in a double game week. So you can say, you know, Fulham, maybe they concede 1 goal per game. You're looking at 4 points maximum. But I think that is the ideal situation. That is the best case scenario, that Ream comes away with 4 points, and I don't think that's very likely. I think in those 2 games, I can see Fulham conceding 2 goals in each of those games, to be honest, because Fulham just concede goals. And you may have watched the Crystal Palace game and thought, hey, clean sheets there, but Crystal Palace playing with 9 men. Crystal Palace also the worst attack in the Premier League. If you look at the numbers, Crystal Palace terrible attack and playing with 9 men. If Fulham were ever going to keep a clean sheet, it would have been in that exact scenario. That is not kind of suggesting that's going to continue to happen at all. And therefore, Ream in the double game week against 2 teams that are capable of scoring goals, you are really better off going for a single game week defender at a similar price than Ream. So many single game week players will outscore Ream. And also, I know I said this last week, but Ream, he scores kind of on average 1 goal every 3 years. So if you're looking for attacking returns, it's just not going to happen. He scored 5 goals in almost 400 career appearances. He just doesn't really score goals at all. So, yeah, not really a player you should be targeting for attacking returns. And in general, I just would not go for Fulham defenders. I think they're going to concede goals. You're not going to get any returns from them, or it's unlikely that you'll get returns out of them. So it seems kind of a little bit pointless to go for them. Plus, you'll be stuck with them as well. You'll have to transfer them out again eventually. You just don't want them in your team. You don't want them for the double. You don't want them for the future. It's absolutely pointless. Waste of a transfer. Terrible idea in my opinion. But I've spoken about Fulham defenders enough. But I know that a lot of people are genuinely thinking about it. I really don't like this one. Really don't like this one. Let's throw in some Chelsea players. We'll try and whiz through them because there are a lot of Chelsea players that we're considering, right? So, Azpilicueta first, you should be fairly nailed on if Chelsea play at 4 at the back. But if they switch formation, there could be rotation for Azpilicueta, because if they do move to kind of a 5 at the back, playing with a right wing back, we could see Loftus-Cheek play in that position. We could see Christian Pulisic maybe playing in that position. So therefore, I feel like although Azpilicueta is an option, I don't think he's a fantastic option. And I've said this before, I think in the double game week in particular, I do feel like Chelsea could potentially concede in each of those games. You expect them to concede against Man City, don't you? Let's be honest, Man City are insanely good, you know, in front of goal. When you've got Haaland, when you've got De Bruyne, you've got to concede goals against teams like this. And Fulham have a good record against Chelsea, and Fulham are actually, even though they're defensively horrible, Fulham are more than capable of creating chances and getting goals. They have been doing that very well. So therefore, Azpilicueta, you know, is he even guaranteed clean sheets in the double game week? I don't think he is. I don't think that, you know, Fulham game is as guaranteed of a clean sheet as a lot of people making it out to be. And a double game week, including Fulham and Man City, is really just a single game week against Fulham in many ways. So I'm not actually too keen on overloading on the Chelsea players. Raheem Sterling is a player that I actually do quite like, and I'm going to put him in the good transfer section. I'm not going to put him a higher than some of these other players because I'm not sure about the longevity of having Sterling in your team, but Fulham will probably concede chances, will probably concede goals, and Sterling seems to be one of the primary attacking outputs for Chelsea at the moment, which is really kind of good to see, kind of interesting to see as well. His numbers are much better than Mason Mount's, for example, but he is a lot more expensive. So the one thing putting me off putting Sterling higher is that those kind of the price. It's the price. And I do think that Chelsea could score against Manchester City as well. I do think that's more than possible. Particularly Sterling, you know, a bit between his teeth, going back against his old club, could he be extra motivated? Maybe. I feel like Sterling could be a genuinely a good transfer, but not quite a great transfer, I don't think, just because of that price. Thiago Silva, I'm going to put lower down in optional. I feel like, again, rotation risk. A lot of people are talking about Silva potentially rotating with Chalobah, so that's definitely a concern. Chelsea have got a lot of games in a short amount of time. Thiago Silva is... he's not exactly a spring chicken. He's not exactly young. So I think there could be rotation there. And I think that is quite risky. Kepa, I like. Nailed on. Would I transfer a goalkeeper? Not necessarily. But if I had to transfer in any goalkeeper right now, it would be Kepa. You know, I think he's the best goalkeeper to have in the league right now, making saves. Chelsea kind of maybe improving defensively a little bit. But I, again, don't think there'll be clean sheets necessarily. But we know Kepa is nailed on at least. So you're going to get both games in the double from him. And even if he is playing against some tough attacks, all that means is that maybe he gets more save points. So he's going to get, you know, points for playing in each game and save points in each game. It could actually end up being a reasonable score. Probably not anything mega, but it could be an acceptable score, a decent score. And he's a goalkeeper you can take forward as well, which I quite like. So yeah, Kepa I think is a great transfer. In fact, let's put him the only thing, you know, if he wasn't a goalkeeper, I would be putting him higher, but goalkeeper transfers typically are not recommended, but I still think it's just a great player to have right now. Cucurella is good that he's nailed on right now. I think that is the biggest benefit of him, that he is nailed on right now until Chilwell comes back in a few weeks. We may have some trouble then. Chilwell could even be ready by the double game week, potentially, but probably not. There is a chance. Could we see Cucurella rotated? Possibly, but probably not. He's probably the more nailed on than the likes of Azpilicueta and Thiago Silva. What I don't like about Cucurella is that he doesn't really have any kind of attacking ability among him at all. Like he doesn't create chances for his teammate. He doesn't take shots on. He's got some of the worst attacking stats of any defender really in the whole Premier League, which is not really good to hear. Maybe he could be playing a little bit more advanced with Reece James out of the team, but I don't know how confident I am. It seems a little bit speculative. I think he's definitely optional. But again, with the fact that we are not necessarily expecting clean sheets in the double game week for Chelsea, and we've got you know, no real chance of attacking returns from Cucurella. He doesn't provide that for your team. You can't have saves for save points. There's a little bit of rotation risk there. A very small amount, but a little bit nonetheless. He's optional, but I'm not confident in putting him in a good transfer. Again, I feel like Luke Shaw in game week 19 could really genuinely outscore all of the Chelsea defenders. I genuinely feel like that's more than possible. Probably more likely to happen, to be honest. I don't know for sure, but for sure, no pun intended, but yeah, that's where I'm going to put him. Kai Havertz I like as an interesting pick. Some people saying that Aubameyang may play one of these games. Again, a lot of games in a tight period of time for Chelsea, including cup games. So maybe there is a bit of rotation that has to come in for Chelsea, but Kai Havertz has been in very good form. If he gets the start against Fulham, then I think maybe that on its own could be good enough. So I think that is a good transfer. I like this one. Arguably like it more than Andreas. I think he's going to be one of the top ones. Let's put him ahead of Rashford as well. Yeah, I like this one. I think it's a good transfer. The hope is that he plays both games, and if he does, I think you're onto a good thing, because like I say, Man City have been conceding more chances than usual this season, and Fulham concede a lot of chances, so those attackers for Chelsea I do think are going to provide a bit of value. And Mason Mount has the nailedness locked down. He doesn't have the same attacking potential as some of his teammates. I still think he's a good transfer. I do feel like Havertz I slightly do prefer to Mason Mount, particularly if we're looking at maybe captaining these players. You know, Sterling, I would rather captain than Mason Mount as well, but the price does put me off with Sterling. So I think Mason Mount, for the fact that he's quite accessible, most of you guys are probably going to have at least an opportunity to get him in. I think he could be a good transfer for you. Fairly nailed on as well. Probably one of the, if not the most nailed on player for the Chelsea team there. So I think it's good. And the final double game week player that I haven't spoken about yet is Mitrovic. He's a must buy unless he gets a yellow card in game week 18, which I don't know about because the game hasn't kicked off yet, so I don't know whether Mitrovic is going to get a yellow card. If he gets a yellow card, then suddenly he goes probably down into a void or optional maybe, but for now, assuming he doesn't get a yellow card, which is a risk, he could even get a yellow card in the first of the double game week, then that's going to be bad news. But if we can keep saying, and we say the same thing about Tony, if the upside here is so high for Mitrovic in a double game week against Leicester and Chelsea. Mitrovic scores against anyone, by the way, takes penalties, is just an absolutely insane player in the form of his life, and he's got a double game week. So everything says must buy other than the potential yellow card. It's a really, really difficult one. And arguably, like I say, I'm recording this before Fulham play in game week 18. I'm genuinely hoping Mitrovic gets a yellow card, because otherwise I feel like I'm forced to buy him because the opportunity is so high. And if it goes well, you know, if you are without Mitrovic, you are going to be in deep, deep, deep trouble. So there we go. I'm going to put Mitrovic in the must-buy category, and he's going to be the only player I'm going to put in that category as well. Now, finally, I've got 3 players that are a little bit differential. Not too many people are talking about them, so let's throw them in. So, first of all, Dalot is expected to be back for this game week, so I think that's pretty nice. I think that possibly puts him in the kind of same area as Luke Shaw. If he can be getting that game time, if we think he's going to get a double game week potentially as well in game week 20, I think that's pretty good news. Slightly cheaper than Shaw, has a roughly the same kind of attacking output as Shaw, maybe slightly better in fact, but maybe with Wan-Bissaka's kind of, you know, form, that maybe you kind of feel like Dalot could be rotated a little bit. Not sure. He has been one of Manchester United's better players, most improved players this season, so I do really like him, actually. So I think he's, you know, a player not many people are talking about, but actually should be genuinely considered as a decent transfer. We've got Rodrigo here as well, who I think could outscore some of these other players this game week. Rodrigo had some phenomenal form this season whenever he's been fit, and he is playing against a West Ham team who have actually really, really slipped up defensively. So therefore, could, going for a Leeds attacker against West Ham, and Leeds, by the way, have good fixtures after that West Ham fixture as well. So Rodrigo is a player you could keep for a while. He's a very nice cheap price. Not many people are talking about him or going for him at the moment, but I think it might be actually time to start thinking about Rodrigo again. So I'm going to put him in the good transfer category. Bit of a differential there. Many people will just not even be thinking about him at all at this moment, with the likes of the double game week players and the likes of Arsenal and Newcastle players doing so well. But Rodrigo could be a little bit of a hidden gem. And finally, Cody Gakpo. Yes, he is going to be in the game for game week 19, which is really exciting for Liverpool fans, I'm sure. But I am going to have to put him in the avoid category, because I don't think he's going to be ready to play immediately. And even if he does play immediately, we're probably expecting it to be a kind of an appearance from the bench or something like that. It's very, very rare that a player will come in and start playing for their team immediately, you know, a day or two after arriving at the club. That is very, very rare that that would happen unless the team really is desperate. Not quite sure Liverpool are quite that desperate, because Firmino is going to be back and available. So therefore, Gakpo, an exciting one for the near future, but for this particular game week, I think we're a little bit early, but can't wait to see him started. But yeah, I would say Liverpool fans, or, you know, football fans in general, Netherlands football fans, PSV fans, don't know if there's any of you guys out there. I know you're excited. Hold off just a little bit before going for Gakpo, in my opinion. And there we go. That concludes this very, very long video, long tier list of a lot of players that I'm sure you guys are interested in. There you go. What do you reckon, guys? Any other players you think are must-buys? Anything other players who you think are avoids? Let me know. Would you move anyone here? Do you think actually some of these players I've ranked highly should be lower? Some players I've ranked low should be higher? Let me know in the comments. Always really good to get your opinions. Thanks so much for watching. Apologies, this has been a bit of a long one, but I guess we've got to cram a lot of content in just a few days. We've got so much to talk about for the double game week, and yes, the next game week is happening so soon. So yeah, apologies for that. If you wouldn't mind leaving a like, I would really appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't done already. I know a lot of you guys are not subscribed, and it means the world to me. It really does. It's the final day before the New Year's Day as well, so it'd be nice to finish off final video of the year with a bang, decent amount of likes, maybe a few subscribers as well. Would love that. But yeah, guys, I will see you tomorrow for the next video. We're going to try and push out as much content as we can before the Game Week 19 deadline, but it's going to be tough because there's not much time. But yeah, basically, I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.